Hi, everybody. Here we are. It's me and little Margot. Say hey, Margot. Hey, everybody. Sorry, she's kind of upset that I just ruined her nap. Her eyes are closed. She listens to me about as well as you guys do. Did I say that already? Anyway, chapter 11, Lizzie's Groceries, starts on page 140. Will you join me there? When we last left Lena, she had just discovered that her grandmother had passed away. I could lose it just thinking about that. But let's shift gears here a little bit. Let's talk about Lizzie's Groceries. Lena spent all day in Mrs. Murdo's house, which was just like theirs, only neater. There was one couch and one fat chair covered in fuzzy striped material and one big table. Only Mrs. Murdo's table wasn't wobbly like theirs. On the table was a basket, and in the basket were 3 turnips, each of them lavender on one end and white on the other. Mrs. Murdo must have put them there, Lena thought, not just because she was going to have them for dinner, but also because they were beautiful. Lena sat sideways on the couch with her legs stretched out, and Mrs. Murdo covered her with a soft gray-green blanket. "This will keep you warm," she said, tucking it in around Lena's legs. Lena didn't really feel cold, but she did feel sad, which was, in a way, the same. The blanket felt good, like someone holding her. Mrs. Murdo gave Poppy a long purple scarf to play with and made a creamy mushroom soup with potatoes. And all day Lena stayed there, snuggled under the blanket. She thought about her grandmother, who had a long and mostly cheerful life. She cried some and fell asleep. She woke up and played with Poppy. The day had a strange but comforting feel to it, like a rest between the end of one time and the beginning of another. That's so accurate, you guys. That's a beautiful sentence. So beautiful that I want to read it one more time. The day had a strange but comforting feel to it, like a rest between the end of one time, the life that she had spent with her grandmother, and the beginning of another, this new life with Mrs. Murdo. On the morning of the next day, Lena got up and got ready to go to work. Mrs. Murdo gave her beet tea and spinach hash for breakfast. "The singing's coming soon," she remarked to Lena as they ate. "Do you know your part?" "Yes," said Lena. "I remember it pretty well from last year." "Well, I rather like the singing," said Mrs. Murdo. "Oh, I love it," Lena said. "I think it's my favorite part of the year." Once a year, the people of the city came together to sing the 3 great songs of Ember. Just thinking of it made Lena feel better. She finished her breakfast and put on her red jacket. "Now don't worry about Poppy. I'll take care of her," said Mrs. Murdo as Lena headed for the door. "When you come back this evening, we'll talk about how to proceed." "Proceed?" said Lena. "Well, you can't live by yourselves, just the 2 of you, can you?" "We can't?" "Well, certainly not," said Mrs. Murdo sternly. "Who's going to take care of Poppy while you go off delivering messages? You must move in here with me. I have an empty bedroom after all, and a quite nice one. Come and look." She opened a door at the far end of the living room, and Lena peeked in. She had never seen such a beautiful, cozy room. There was a big, lumpy bed covered with a faded blue blanket, and at its head 4 plump pillows. Next to the bed was a chest of drawers with drawer handles shaped like teardrops and a mirror attached to the top. The carpets on the floor were all different shades of blue and green, and in the corner was a sturdy table and chair with a back like a ladder. "This will be your room," said Mrs. Murdo. "Yours and Poppy's. You'll have to share the bed, but it's big enough." "Oh, it's lovely," said Lena. "You're so kind, Mrs. Murdo." "Well," said Mrs. Murdo briskly, "it's just common sense. You need a place. I have one. You go on now. I'll see you in the evening." 3 days had passed since Lena and June had seen the man in the pipe works, and there hadn't been any special announcements. So if that man had discovered a way out of Ember, he was keeping the news to himself, and Lena couldn't understand why. As Lena ran through the city with her messages on her first day back to work, it seemed to her that the mood of the people was even gloomier than before. There were long, silent lines at the markets, and knots of people gathered in the squares talking in low voices. Many shops, more each day it seemed, displayed signs on their windows saying "closed" or "open Monday and Tuesday only." Every now and then the lights flickered, and people stopped and looked up in fright. When the flickering ended and the lights stayed on, people just took a breath and walked on. Lena delivered her messages as usual, but inside she felt strange. Everywhere she ran, she heard the same words like a drumbeat in her mind. "Alone in the world, alone in the world." It wasn't exactly true. I mean, she had Poppy, she had friends, and she had Mrs. Murdo, who was somewhere between a friend and a relative. But she felt as if she had suddenly gotten older in the last 3 days. She was a sort of mother herself now. What happened to Poppy was more or less up to her. As the day went on, she stopped thinking alone in the world and began thinking about her new life at Mrs. Murdo's. She thought about the blue-green room and planned on how she would arrange her pictures on the walls. The one she'd drawn with her blue pencil would look especially nice because it would match the color of the rugs. She could bring her pillows from home and add them to the ones on her bed, and then she'd have 6 altogether. And maybe she could find some old blue dresses or shirts to make pillow covers for them. The blue-green room, an orderly apartment, the meals cooked and blankets tucked in cozily at night, all of this gave her a feeling of comfort, almost luxury. She was grateful for Mrs. Murdo's kindness. "I'm not ready yet to be alone in the world," she thought. Late that afternoon, Lena was given a message to take to Lampling Street. She delivered the message and, as she was coming back out into the street, caught sight of Lizzie coming out of the door of the supply depot. Her orange hair was unmistakable. "Lizzie!" Lena called out. Lizzie must not have heard her. She kept on going. Lena called again. "Hey, Lizzie, wait!" This time it was clear that Lizzie had heard, but instead of stopping, she walked faster. What's the matter with her? Lena wondered. She ran after her and grabbed the back of her coat. "Lizzie, it's me." Lizzie stopped and turned around. Oh, she said. Her face was flushed. It's you. Hi. I thought it was, I didn't realize it was you." She smiled brightly, but there was a distracted look in her eyes. I was just going home," she said. Her arms were wrapped around a small, bulging sack. "Well, I'll walk with you," said Lena. Oh, said Lizzie. "Oh, good." But she didn't look pleased. "Lizzie, something sad has happened," Lena said. "My grandmother died." Lizzie gave her a quick sideways glance, but she didn't stop walking. "Oh, well, that's too bad," she said absently. "Poor you." What is wrong with her? Lizzie was ordinarily so interested in other people's misfortunes. Well, she could be sincerely sympathetic, too, when she wasn't wrapped up in her own troubles. Lena changed the subject. "What's in the sack?" she asked. Oh, just some groceries," said Lizzie. "I stopped at the market after work." "You did?" Lena was confused. She had seen Lizzie not 2 minutes ago leaving the storeroom office. Lizzie didn't answer. She began walking and talking quite fast. It was so busy today at work. Work is so hard, isn't it, Lena? Yeah, I think work is much harder than school and not as interesting. You do the same thing like every day. I get so tired, don't you, running all around all day? Lena started to say that she liked running and hardly ever got tired, but Lizzie didn't wait for her to answer. Oh, well, I mean, I guess there's some good things about it. Guess what, Lena? I have a boyfriend. Yeah, I met him at work. He really likes me. He says my hair is the exact color of a red-hot burner on a stove. Lena laughed. Well, it's true, Lizzie, she said. You look like your head's on fire. Lizzie laughed too and lifted one hand to fluff her hair. She puckered her lips and fluttered her eyelashes. He says I'm as beautiful as a red tomato. They were crossing Torrix Square now. It was crowded in the square. People had just left work and were lining up at the shops and hurrying along with packages. A cluster of children sat on the pavement playing some sort of game. Well, who is this boyfriend? Asked Lena. But just at that moment, Lizzie tripped. She'd been strutting along, being beautiful, not paying attention to her feet, and the edge of her shoe caught in an uneven place on the pavement. She staggered and fell, and as she fell, she lost her grip on the sack. It hit the ground and toppled sideways, and some of the cans spilled out. They rolled in all different directions. Lena reached for Lizzie's arm. Oh my gosh, did you hurt yourself? She asked. But Lizzie went scrambling after the cans so quickly that it was clear she wasn't hurt. Wanting to help, Lena went after the cans too. 2 had rolled under the bench. Another was going toward the children, who were on their feet now, watching Lizzie's wild, spider-like motions. Lizzie picked up the cans under the bench, and for a second her breath stopped. One of them was a can of peaches. Peaches! It said right on it, and there was a picture of a yellow globe. She looked at the other one, and it was just as amazing. Creamed corn, it said. Lena remembered having creamed corn once, like as a thrilling treat when she was 5 years old. There was a shout. She looked up. One of the children picked up a can. Whoa, look at this, he cried, and the other children gathered around him. Applesauce, he said, and the children murmured, applesauce, applesauce, as if they had never heard the word before. Lizzie was on her feet. She had all the cans except for the 2 in Lena's hand and the one the child had picked up. She stood there for a moment, her eyes flicking back and forth from Lena to the children. Then she smiled, a bright, fake-looking smile. Thanks for helping me, she said. I found these on a back shelf at the market. What a surprise, huh? Yeah, well, you can keep those. She waved the back of her hand at the children and waved again at Lena and then took off, holding the sack by its neck so it hung beside her and banged against her legs. Lena didn't follow her. She walked home thinking about Lizzie's sack of cans. You simply did not find cans of peaches and applesauce and creamed corn on the back shelves of markets. Lizzie was lying. And if the cans hadn't come from the market, where had they come from? Well, there was only one answer. They had come from the storerooms. Somehow Lizzie had gotten them because she worked in the storeroom office. Had she paid for them? How much? Or had she taken them without paying? Mrs. Murdo had cooked a dinner of beet and bean stew for them that night. When Lena showed her the 2 cans, she gasped in astonishment. Where did you get those? She asked. From a friend, said Lena. And where did your friend get them? Lena shrugged. I don't know. Mrs. Murdo frowned slightly, but didn't ask any more questions. She opened the cans and they had a feast. Creamed corn with their stew and peaches for dessert. It was the best meal Lena had had in a very long time. But her enjoyment of it was tainted just a little by the question of where it had come from. I think she felt guilty. The next morning, Lena headed for Broad Street. Before she started delivering messages today, she was going to have a talk with Lizzie. She spied her a half a block from the storeroom office. She was sauntering along in looking in shop windows. A long green scarf was around her neck. Lena ran up swiftly behind her. "Lizzie," she said. Lizzie whirled around, and when she saw Lena, she flinched. She didn't say anything. She just turned around and kept walking. Lena caught hold of one end of the green scarf and jerked Lizzie to a halt. "Lizzie," she said, "stop." "What for?" Lizzie said. "I'm going to work." And she tried to pull away, but she didn't get far because Lena had a firm grip on her scarf. Lena spoke in a low voice. There were people all around them. A couple of old men leaning against the wall, a group of chattering children just ahead, workers going toward the storeroom. And, well, she just didn't want to be overheard. "You have to tell me where you got those cans," she said. "I told you. I found them on the back shelf of a market. Go on my scarf." Lizzie tried to wrench her scarf out of Lena's grip, but Lena held on. "You didn't," Lena said. "No market would just forget about things like that. Tell the truth." She gave a yank on the end of the scarf. "Stop it!" Lizzie reached out and grabbed a handful of Lena's hair. Lena yelped and pulled harder on the scarf, and the two of them scuffled, snatching at each other's hair and coats. They knocked against a woman who slapped at them angrily, and finally they toppled over, sitting down hard on the pavement. Lena was the first one to laugh. It was so much like what they used to do in fun, like chasing each other and screaming with laughter. Now here they were again, nearly grown girls sitting in a heap on the pavement. After a moment, Lizzie laughed too. "Dope," she said. "All right, I'll tell you. I sort of wanted to anyway." Lizzie leaned forward with her elbows on her knees and she lowered her voice. "Well, it's this," she said. "There's a storeroom worker named Looper. He's a carrier. Do you know him? He was 2 classes ahead of us. Looper Windley." "Yeah, I know who he is," said Lena. "I took a message for him on my first day of work. Tall with a long skinny neck, like big teeth, funny looking." Lizzie looked hurt. "Well, I wouldn't describe him that way. I think he's handsome." Lena shrugged. "Okay, go on." "Well, Looper explores the storerooms. He goes into every room that isn't locked. He wants to know the true situation, Lena. He's not like most workers who just plod along doing their jobs and then go home. He wants to find things out." "Well, then what has he found out?" Lena asked. "Well, he's found out that there's still a little bit left of some rare things. Just a few things in rooms here and there that have been forgotten. You know, Lena," she said, "there are so many rooms down there. Some of them, way out of the edges, are marked empty in the ledger book, and so no one ever goes there anymore. But Looper found out that they're not all empty." "So he's been taking things?" "Well, just a few things, and not often." "And he's giving some to you?" "Yes, because he likes me." Lizzie smiled a little smile and hugged her arms together. "Oh, I see. She feels that way about Looper." "But Looper is stealing," said Lena. "And Lizzie, he isn't just stealing things for you. He has a store. He steals things and sells them for huge prices." "He does not," said Lizzie, but she looked worried. "He does. I know because I bought something from him just a few weeks ago. He has a whole box of colored pencils. Lizzie scowled. Well, he never gave me any colored pencils. Well, he shouldn't be giving you anything or selling things. Don't you think everyone should know about the food that he's found? No, Lizzie cried. Because listen, there's only one can of peaches left. I mean, if there's only one can of peaches left, only one person gets to have it, right? So why should everyone know? They just end up fighting over it, and what good would that be? Lizzie reached out and put a hand on Lena's knee. Listen, she said, I'll ask Looper to find some good stuff for you too. I know he will if I ask him. Before she had time to think, Lena heard herself saying, well, what kind of good stuff? Lizzie's eyes gleamed. Well, there's 2 packages of colored paper, he told me, and some cough medicine, and there are 3 pairs of girls' shoes. It was a treasure. Colored paper and cough medicine to cure sickness and shoes? Well, she hadn't had new ones for almost 2 years. Oh, Lena's heart raced. What Lizzie said was true. If everyone knew there were still a few wonderful things in the storeroom, people would fight each other trying to get to them. But what if no one knew? What difference would it make if she had the colored paper or the shoes? She suddenly wanted those things so badly that she felt weak. A picture arose in her mind's eye. The shelves at Mrs. Murdo's house stocked with good things, and the 3 of them happier and safer than other people. Lizzie leaned closer and lowered her voice. Looper found a can of pineapple. I was going to split it with him, but I'll give you a bite if you promise not to tell. Pineapple. That delectable, long-lost thing that her grandmother had told her about. Was there anything wrong with having just a bite of it, just to see what it was like? I've already tasted peaches and applesauce and a thing called fruit cocktail, said Lizzie. And prunes and creamed corn and cranberry sauce and asparagus? All that? Lena was astonished. Then there's a lot of special things like that still? No, said Lizzie. Not a lot at all. In fact, we've finished all of those. You and Looper? Lizzie nodded, smiling smugly. Looper says it's all going to be gone soon anyway, so why not live well as we can right now? But Lizzie, why should you get all of that? Why you and not other people? Because we found it. Because we can get at it. Well, I don't think it's fair, said Lena. Lizzie spoke as if she were talking to a not very bright child. Well, you can have some too. That's what I'm telling you. There's still a few good things left. But that wasn't the unfairness Lena was thinking of. It was that just 2 people were getting things that everyone would have wanted. She couldn't think of how it should be done. You can't divide a can of applesauce evenly among all the people of the city. Still, something was wrong with grabbing the good things just because you could. It seemed not only unfair to everyone else, but bad for the person who was doing it somehow. She remembered the hunger she had felt when Looper showed her the colored pencils. It wasn't a pleasant feeling. She didn't want to want things like that, or in that way. She stood up. I don't want anything from Looper. Lizzie shrugged. Okay, she said. But there was a look of dismay on her small, pale face. Too bad for you. Well, thanks anyway, said Lena. She set off across Torrix Square, walking fast at first, and then breaking into a run. I want you to think about how Lena must have been feeling, and I want you to decide how you feel. Was what Lizzie and Loop were doing, was that fair? They found that stuff. Was it finders keepers? Or is that the fair thing to do when the rest of your community is suffering, when they're starting to go without things, and you or a friend is sitting back in some storeroom, scarfing down resources, food, supplies that everybody wants? That's a tough one, isn't it? I want you to think about that. What would you do? What's the right thing to do? It's a lot to think about. Well, my friends, Margot and I, we say good night. Goodbye. Say goodbye. All right. We love you. We hope you guys enjoyed the story. That was a long chapter. Thanks for sticking in there. Look at her closing her eyes. She didn't want to hear anything I say. Sheesh. Bye, you guys.